today we're actually going to have a guest. It's a very special guest. Today we have someone who is actually an urban farmer. He's from New York City. He does science, but he actually it's does science in a farm, which is a really interesting thing to see. So, without further ado, I'm gonna present our guest. His name is David Klein, and I'm gonna let him introduce himself. So, David, how are you doing?
Let's see if I'm. Oh, good morning. I don't know if anyone can hear me, see me.
Good morning.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me at your class. My name is David, and I'm a compost operator. I work at a composting facility on Governor's Island, an organization called Earth Matter.
Awesome, awesome. So while we get introduced, I'm gonna present some pictures because David came ready with a lot of pictures. They're really cool, and they all are from the composting, which we're gonna explain a little bit. But they're so cool. Let me just present my screen. Give me 1 second. And David, can you tell us where is that farm that you mentioned, and what is the name again?
Our organization is called Earth Matter, and it's located on Governor's Island. There are a few other urban farms and organizations there that do environmental work, and we're one of them.
Okay, awesome.
There it is.
By the way, I'm presenting my screen, so if you still see Kayla's screen, try to unpin. So click on the unpin button. It's like the same as the pin, but with a line through it. So just click unpin so you can see the presentation and you can see all the pictures, all the photos that Davey brought for us. So I'm gonna just move to the pictures. All right. So is this what we're looking? Is this the farm at Governor's Island?
Sure. So actually, this is an image of the Grow NYC's teaching farm, which is directly across the street from us. But this image is great because it shows Chloe, who's one of the farm workers there, applying compost to a farm bed. This is compost that we produce at Earth Matter. And this was actually just taken the other day. She's getting prepared to seed the farm row with rye as a cover crop for the winter.
Oh, that's so cool. So, by the way, this is Governor's Island. I just put a picture. Governor's Island. You can visit
great.
it. Can we visit Governor's Island?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Can we visit Governor's Island?
Yeah,
right
the Governor's Island has a open public season. You have 2 more weeks of that season. It ends on November 1st. But yeah, anyone can visit Governor's Island. There are no land bridges there. The only way to get there is on a boat. So there's a ferry that leaves at next to the Staten Island ferry. And very interestingly, I just want to point out that Governor's Island was much smaller over 100 years ago. The majority of the island, about 2/3 of it, was created using the rock that was mined when building the subway system. All that rock that was taken out to create the tunnels went other places. And one of the places it went was to Governor's Island to create a larger landmass.
That's so cool. So I see a couple of questions in the chat. I think the main one is, what is compost? What is the compost, its farm in Governor's Island?
Sure. So, compost decomposition takes place in nature without human intervention. But when humans manage the process of decomposition, we call it composting. So anything that was once living will eventually decompose and return to the soil, hopefully, if we can get it going in the right place. So, for instance, you have an image here of some of the food waste that we receive to be made into compost. So residents of New York City are able to hold on to their food scrap, so things that they haven't eaten that might have gone bad, or perhaps when they're cooking their meal, onion skins, carrot greens, things that might not go into the food. If you hold on to them and bring them to a drop-off location, they'll find their way to a local composting facility like us at Earth Matter, and we'll turn it into compost. That dark material that you saw Chloe in the beginning applying to a farm bed.
So basically, you're getting all the food leftovers from New York City and bringing them to Governor's Island. Is that correct?
We would hope to get all of it. Unfortunately, we get a very small amount. About 30% of the trash created in New York City, residential trash, is made up of organic materials that could be composted, but are currently being directed to a landfill, which is very unfortunate.
All right, all right. So that's cool. That is amazing. I see some other
Oh,
people working here.
sure. So part of the composting process is we blend the organic material that's rich in nitrogen, like food waste, fresher material, with a carbon-rich material. So things that are very dry, like wood chip or dried leaves. We blend them both together, make sure that there's a lot of moisture, water, and air as well. And the combination of these elements creates an environment in which microorganisms can thrive and decompose this organic material. Oh, that's great. And there's an image of some bacteria floating around. On the left, we have some images of worms. They're a macroorganism, but they're very important in breaking down this organic material and putting it into a state which can then be reapplied to the soil and feed plants. Also on the right there's some mushrooms, the fruiting body of fungus. Those are really great at breaking down the woodier materials that, like you see on the top there, those wood chips that are growing on.
I see, I see. So these giant mountains, this is how we start, right? Is this how we start? Just bringing them
Yeah,
first?
exactly. So we receive those food scraps that residents have brought, and we work with teams of people and some of our heavy machinery to blend all that material together. The piles can get quite large.
Yeah, people in the chat are saying "ew," and I kind of agree. So for those of you who don't know, I used to work there for a little bit as well, and the smell is real, isn't that right, David? How does it smell in there?
It can be. It can smell a little bit, but if the process is managed well, the smells are not as apparent. And so one of the ways that we manage that is to make sure, oh, if you go back to that image with the piles, that's a great example. We want to make sure that the piles have a lot of air. And you can see between the two piles, there's a little sort of white pipe sticking out. So what we do to, oh, there, that's great. So when we create these piles, we lay them on top of a long pipe that has perforations in it, little holes through the pipe. And at one end, like you see this little green thing there, that's a blower, the same type of blower used to inflate bouncy house castles you may have seen. We use them in this case to force air through the pipe and ensure that the compost, the material we're decomposing, has enough air, that the microbes in there are fed enough air. And it's the aerobic microbes that don't give off smelly odors. So by making sure that it's aerated, we can ensure that it doesn't smell bad.
Awesome, awesome. And some people in the chat are saying that those bacteria might be bad, but I think those bacteria are actually pretty good. They're good bacteria and they're good microorganisms that are breaking down this food. So it should be really safe to actually hold it in your hand, right?
Yeah, I mean, you would want to wash your hands afterwards before you ate food or anything like that. Some bacteria are good for us and some are bad. The ones that we're focusing on and making the compost are really good at breaking down organic material, and so they're very helpful for that process. Oh,
Oh,
and this, yeah,
this one?
that's a beautiful image. So sometimes, well, I should mention that when we put a large volume of organic material together in a pile, um, it can get very hot. Heat is a byproduct of the metabolism of some of these bacteria, and so I there's an image in here somewhere of what it looks like on a cold day with a lot of that heat. Oh well, there's a exactly. Um, so what we're seeing in this image is some of the water vapor that's coming off of the piles. Um, there's a picture of a thermometer to actually show you how hot it can get. You can read that there. It's 140 degrees inside that pile. And so on a cold day, we see quite a lot of water vapor coming off of the top of the piles.
That is really hot, 140 degrees inside the pile. So those bacteria and those worms and the fungi are just working hard, breaking down that food, and it gets 140 degrees. That is extremely hot.
Yeah. Well, when it's this hot at this stage of the process, it's the bacteria that are predominant. The worms can't really survive in that environment, and the fungi as well. It's in the later stages that we see the worms and the fungi doing their job. But in these early stages with high temperatures, it's the bacteria that are predominantly the actors decomposing.
So
And
all that steam is caused, all that water vapor is caused by the bacteria, right?
yeah, yeah. And so when the water vapor comes off, sometimes when it gets too hot, our piles will dry out, and the bacteria need the water to survive. And so that's what that image we saw of Andrea using a fire hose to moisture condition the compost, as Charlie uses the heavy machinery to turn it.
Right. Some people are asking the chat, does it really get that hot? Like, can you put your hand and feel the heat?
Oh yes, most definitely. In fact, I've burned my hand putting it into the pile, not realizing how hot it was.
Oh my goodness. I mean, hopefully not a very bad burn, just like
Oh no, no, but you know.
okay, okay. All right. So I think is what are we looking at here? Is this the final product of Compost?
Yeah, so this is our finished product, and this is some that we've provided across the street to that Grow NYC farm. And you see the divots in that. That was from the shovel that Chloe was using to take some to apply to the farm beds.
So this is basically food scraps from people's houses after how many, after how long?
This is a little over a year,
Wow.
a
So
little over a
all
year of allowing the bacteria, the worms, the fungi to do their thing and transform that material into a state in which, when applied to soil, it can feed plants.
that is so cool. So I see also people using kind of compost in gardens, in trees.
Yeah, and there's a lot of really old trees on Governor's Island, and the horticulture staff that work there use the compost to around the trees, and then they cover it with some wood chip, and this really helps the soil and helps feed the trees as well.
Okay. By the way, I just want to ask the chat. Just let's be respectful and let's keep focus on the lesson. It's a really cool lesson. So let's keep going. Speaking of worms, because I think all the students are really focused on the worms because worms
Uh-huh.
are pretty cool. We also see. Let me see if I can see it. Some
Ah,
chickens. Can you tell us more
yes.
about these chickens?
Sure, we keep some chickens on our at our site. We want to show that food scrap, can go to feed microorganisms like bacteria and fungi, but before it gets there, it can also go to feed animals like chickens. And so we use some of the food scrap to feed our birds. There's a great example. We have a wide variety of birds. There are many different breeds of chickens, and we have a whole colorful array of them. Yeah, and there's a great image of on the left there some of the food scrap that we feed to the chickens. They love to claw through it and find things to eat. They're
Um,
particularly fond of apples and corn on the cob, I could say.
in the chat, they ask, "Are the chickens chasing you?" I think from what I was when I was there is, I'm the one doing the chasing. The chickens have not don't want anything to do with me. Is that correct?
Yeah, it depends on the time of the day. When you get there first thing in the morning and they know that there's food coming, they all gather around and follow you wherever you go until that food is put down on their and into their house.
Yeah. And by the way, for those people in the chat, if you go there, you can actually visit the farm. Hopefully soon. I know it's very weird right now with the whole coronavirus, but whenever it's ready, you can actually visit and try to follow one of those chickens. All right, let's see. What are we looking at here? This is very
Ah, so
worrisome.
so this is interesting. So this is a hawk. There's a family of four red-tailed hawks that live on Governor's Island. There used to be one, then there was two, and then they had two children, and now there's a family of four. And so this is troublesome for our chickens because hawks are predators of chickens. And so we have lost some chickens this year to the red-tailed hawks. Everyone has to eat, so we understand, but we do we do want to keep our chickens safe.
Yeah, actually, a couple of weeks ago, everybody here in science class, they chose a local bird, and a lot of people chose hawks because that's one of our New Yorker birds, species of birds. So it doesn't get as much as New York as hawks, just in Governor's Island. So hawks are good, right? They're kind of. I mean, are they causing any damage in there, or are they just living in peace?
Well, they you know, they do eat some of the chickens, but they also go after other things that we try to not have around. There are some rodents like rats that show up on Governor's Island, and the hawks will eat those, so that's very good.
That is awesome. I
Ah.
think we have a question for the chat. Like, can you ask a question for this one, Mr. Klein?
Sure. So I should say that we were losing some chickens to hawks, but then we started to realize that there were situations in which the hawks probably wouldn't have been able to get the chicken, and we couldn't figure out what was causing the chicken to disappear. And then one day after a rain in the mud, we found some animal tracks. Can anyone identify who this animal might be?
All right, let's put our detective skills in the chat. So what animal is this that was sneaking into the chickens and getting some of them? So it's not a hawk because we said that the hawks couldn't get where the chickens were. All right, I'd see fox, raccoon, eagle, bear, lizards. What else? Eagles, wolves. I would hope we have wolves in New York City. I think somebody says other chickens. Lizards, raccoons, rats, a panda, said Osaze. All right, so what is it? What is the correct answer for this?
We've identified it to be a raccoon.
Oh my goodness. The culprit is here.
You can see the paw print, or the paw.
Yeah, raccoons are really cute, but you can really identify the 5 fingers. It's like a dead giveaway.
Yeah. And so there's a further mystery to try to figure out how the raccoon got on the island. We know raccoons can swim, but it seems like a far distance. So we don't know if it's stowed away on a boat. We're not really sure how it got there.
Oh, so it's still a mystery? People don't know
Still
how
a mystery.
to...
We're still actually looking for the raccoon, yeah.
Oh, so the raccoon hasn't appeared? We just see the tracks?
Yeah, exactly, and the missing chickens, yeah.
Wow, I didn't know about that. So I hope the raccoon is found soon. But hopefully, hopefully the raccoon makes a family and, lives peacefully. All right, so let's keep going. Oh, what are these?
Oh, so at Earth Matter, we also keep goats. We have each year we get 2 baby goats on loan from a farm, and then at the end of the season, we return them to the farm. This were the goats we had last year. We have a contest each year to name them. This particular year, they were named Daisy and Poppy. And goats are great. They eat a lot of the vegetation. We have a crabapple orchard on the site, and on the right you can see a picture of me feeding them a crabapple. They particularly fond of the crabapples.
That's so cool. And again, if you go to Governor's Island when it's the right season, you can actually go and feed some of the goats and hopefully pet them. I used to love petting those goats.
Yeah, they're very sweet, and they have really interesting eyes. Their eyes are rectangular.
Yeah, it's one of the few animals that have that kind of shape in their eyes. But yeah, they're really cool. They seem like a completely different world. But yeah, goats are the goat. All right. So tell us a little bit about this picture, if you can.
Sure. So this is a woman dropping off food scrap at one of those residential drop-off sites I had mentioned. She's using a paper bag to bring her food scraps in, which is great because it's not plastic, and paper, like wood chip, it comes from trees, so it can actually be a part of the compost process.
Okay. And it's important that it's paper?
Yeah, I mean, it's helpful. It's a great alternative to using plastic when bringing food scraps to a drop-off site. A reusable container is very useful as well. But yeah, we like to try to cut down on our use of plastic.
Oh, I see. I mean, it makes sense, right? So paper bags used to be part of nature. There used to be trees and plants. All right. So in the chat, by the way, Jonathan, we're going to keep the questions for the end. So let's save those questions, and also let's stay focused on the chat. Let's make sure we stay focused on the lesson. There's going to be some questions after this, so make sure you are paying attention. Thank you, Osaze, and please, let's keep on task. All right, so let's keep moving. Let's see what else we see here. I remember taking this picture,
Yeah.
and you took it too. So this is in the Bronx, right? Is this a place where people can bring their food scraps, or there used to be a place?
Yeah, it used to be. Funding money, it's always an issue. And unfortunately, this drop-off location is no longer there. However, there are drop-off locations in the Bronx. There are currently two at Grow NYC farmers markets. And I looked up, there is a map actually at the on the Earth Matter website that shows all the places in New York City where people can bring food scrap to be composted. And there are a number in the Bronx, most of them at community gardens.
All right. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I think it's important that us people in the Bronx, we cannot take care of our neighborhoods because what is the advantages of having these food scraps just taken away? Like, how can you explain? How does it benefit us, people in the Bronx, to have these food scraps just going to a different location and being recycled?
Well, it's beneficial to compost them because that is a resource you can then use to create healthy soil and really help plants grow. So it's great for helping to grow food. But one of the negative aspects of sending food scrap to a landfill, which is where a lot of it's going, unfortunately, is that in a landfill, if it when it's not decomposed using air, which in anaerobically, it can generate methane, which is a very harmful greenhouse gas. It also, material that goes to a landfill, it really never comes out of a landfill. It's a wasted resource. And yeah, landfills are not healthy,
Right, and also
positive places.
right, and I completely agree. And also, we don't want trash in our neighborhood. We don't want trash that might
Oh, yes.
attract rodents as well, right? So we want our streets in the Bronx to stay clean. We don't want those rats just making our way into our apartments. So that's just advantages and advantages and advantages of recycling food scraps. Let's see what else. What are some things that we, as let's say sixth graders in here, where we can go in the Bronx to take advantage of these programs?
I would look for a local community garden. Um, I'm not. I'm sorry. I'm not that familiar with Bronx specific gardens. But again, if you look on our website at the drop-off locations, a lot of them are located at community gardens, and you could try to get involved there.
Right, and there's actually some community gardens. I'll put it after the class that you can actually visit right here, right there in Soundview, near where our school is. There's actually community gardens that you can visit. You can get some vegetables, you can get some eggs sometimes, and you can help create these green spaces in the Bronx, which is super important. Again, we go back to compost. Composting is one of the ways where we can make the Bronx greener. So is there any, like, what else do you want to tell us, David?
Oh, just yeah, get involved. It's really important that everybody you know participates in this because it's really unfortunately the powers that be don't necessarily make things happen. It's really the individuals and that participate at the bottom that will make a change. So I really encourage everyone to get involved.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, we were talking about some scientists recently. For those in the chat, we were talking about Raven, and it's like scientists that come from our communities. They might not feel the same respect, but it's up to us, residents of the Bronx, just to take care of our communities because we cannot depend. And I think you agree with that, David. We cannot depend on the government to do the work for us. We have to have those initiatives and take the power basically to do these things.
Yes, yes, it's really important that it comes from the people.
All right. That is so cool. We would love to visit Governor's Islands pretty soon.
Yeah, I would,
Hopefully when it's open.
yeah, I would love to have you. Hopefully next year, if this pandemic is under control, things can go back to normal, and we can have a lot of school groups come through, like your class.
All right. So let's open up for questions. So people in chat, do we have questions? And you can, if you want to unmute, you can write me or unmute so we can hear your questions. Mia, go ahead, and then Abubakar. Mia, go first.
My question is not really a question. It's that I put it in the chat, but I still don't get the difference between compost and soil.
That's a great question. So soil is made up primarily of minerals, which are rocks in very small pieces. And compost is the organic element. So the part of soil that was once living. So soil is made up of these elements. It also has air and water in there. So when we're composting, we're focusing on the organic matter, the things that were once living, and those are part of the soil. So soil is made up of these various elements, one of which is the organic material, the compost.
That's awesome. Remember, basically soil, by the way, we studied molecules this past week. So basically soil is made of air molecules, water molecules, organic molecules. All those molecules are in soil. Is that correct?
Yeah. So composting is not separate from soil. It's part of soil.
All right. Abubakar, go ahead, unmute. What's your question, Abubakar?
My question was that do people live on Governor's Island?
That's a great question. It's a public space, so it's mostly parkland. Nobody lives there except there's some of the ferry crew sleep there for periods of time, and there's an overnight watchman. But no, nobody lives on the island currently.
All right, that's cool. Yeah, the parks in there are so beautiful. Even if you don't go for the farm, the parks in there are amazing. You can get a full view of New Jersey, the city, and even the Statue of Liberty. Let's see, Amaya Butler, go ahead.
I would like to ask, how far is the island from New York?
That's a great question. It's part of New York City. It's very close. It's about an 8-minute boat ride from the southern tip of Manhattan. I don't know the actual miles, but it's very close.
Yeah, and it actually, if you go to Manhattan, you go to the most southern tip. You go to Battery Park it's a Battery Park where they take the ferry, and the ferry is like 10 minutes, right?
Yeah, it's a short ferry ride. The ferry dock is just next to the Staten Island ferry dock. So if you've ever taken the ferry to Staten Island, it's a smaller pier just next to it.